Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, your weekly dose of knife news and information about knives and knife collecting. Here's your host, Bob the Knife Junkie DeMarco.
Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast. I'm your host, Bob DeMarco. On this edition of the show, I'm speaking with Joshua Wolfe of Redbeard Blades. I first met Josh at Blade Show 2024, where I was drawn in by his clean, robust fixed blade designs and his enthusiastic marketing team who are manning his booth at the moment. Josh is a combat veteran and outdoorsman whose knives are inspired by his military service and the broad range of highly specialized survival training he's received. We planned a podcast for last August, but he was pulled away due to relief work in the aftermath of storms that battered the East Coast in the summer of 2024. We'll meet Josh and hear all about Redbeard Blades, but first, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and download the show to your favorite podcast app. That way, you can listen to the show while on the go. Also, if you'd like to help support the show, you can do so by sharing it. That goes a great distance in helping the show. But if you want to help it in a different way, you can go to TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon and check out the different things we have to offer you for your support. I will repeat that address again. It's TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon.
Adventure Delivered, your monthly subscription for hand-picked outdoor, survival, EDC, and other cool gear from our expert team of outdoor professionals. TheKnifeJunkie.com/BattleBox.
Josh, welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me today.
It's great. I'm glad we finally made this work.
I am too. I again apologize about that. Like you said, I had to go to work basically that day, so it was a rough week.
I got to say, that's the coolest reason ever that I've had anyone have to postpone a show. So thanks for what you were doing there. I live on the East Coast, though not in that affected area at the time. But also, thanks for your service. Army Ranger and three tours in Afghanistan. Thanks for your service.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So knives. Obviously, knives play a huge role in the stuff you were doing before you came back and started this business. But tell me how they played into your life in the military.
Oh, I mean, I carried a knife almost every day of my career when I was in the military. I mean, from basic training to Ranger school, Ranger selection. I mean, airborne school, all the crazy schools that I always did, and then I mean, all the deployments. I mean, from opening MREs to I had to break some blocks overseas off of boxes from time to time. I had to try to bust open doors with them before. And that's honestly kind of how I got started into making knives. I got hurt jumping out of an airplane, obviously, doing stupid stuff. And I had a lot of time on my hands. And all of a sudden, I started watching YouTube one day, and I saw people making knives. And I'm like, man, I've never had a really good knife. I always tend to break my knives doing stupid things with my knives that you shouldn't do with your knives. And I was like, I bet I can make a really good knife that might not do that. Let's try it. And I mean, the bug pretty much just bit me from then on out. Because I was always like, I'm a pretty handy guy. I might be able to make a knife. Lo and behold, trying to make my first knife, I did realize I wasn't as handy as I thought. But 10 years later, I'm still doing it. So, I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of starting to figure it out and kind of get into my stride finally. And hopefully everybody is starting to notice that as well. So we'll see how it goes in the future.
That's funny that you say you're hitting your stride, because what I saw at your booth, especially the Midnight Patriot, I'm a huge fan of that knife. I think I saw one there. That's the one that you made for your dad, I think. But I love that knife, and everything I was looking at seemed really refined. We'll get to that in a second, but I'm very curious. I've talked to a lot of knife makers or former military, former Marines, and I know that knives are used a lot of the time for chopping holes in walls if you're a sniper, or prying open doors and stuff like that. What was your experience while in the service in terms of the kind of knives you were getting and what you actually had to use them for?
Oh, so honestly, because I was in the Army, and the Army is just miserable at giving you knives. They're so bad at issuing anything that's functional for a knife. I got issued like 3 or 4 Gerbers, which is great. Like, there's a use for a Gerber, but I mean, the knife is like a toothpick for what we need it for. And I mean, I probably just opened MREs with that thing all the time. So I always ended up buying my own knives, and using them how you should use a knife, and also abusing them how you shouldn't use a knife. But I mean, I did all sorts of things up to, I remember when I was in sniper school, we were doing a stalk where you dress up in your ghillie suits and you try to, stalk towards an objective and not get seen. And I ended up chopping a tree and basically replanting it in front of me. So I chopped it with that chopping knife, and I dug a hole to replant the tree in order for me to pass that stalk. So, I mean, I've done all sorts of things you probably shouldn't be doing with a knife. But if it works, it works. A knife is a tool to me. So
That is really cool. So you used your knife to chop down a sapling or some sort of a tree, and you dug a hole and planted it in front of you where you were kind of hiding, right? Is that what you're?
yeah, that's what I was doing. I was basically using it as a little bit of concealment, along with my ghillie suit and a couple other things. But I was standing, which is funny. I had a tripod and everything out, and I didn't get seen, so it was a good day for me. Probably a bad day for that knife edge, but I could sharpen a knife, so we're good.
Do you remember what that was? What you were using?
You know what? It was probably maybe a Gerber, like a Gerber blade from Walmart. It was probably like 50, 60 bucks or something like that at the time. I don't remember the exact model. It was before I kind of became more of a knife nerd. Now I'm a knife nerd, which I'm perfectly okay with. I think it's a fun community to be in. At the time, I was so focused on military and being young at the time. So.
All right, before we get to talking about your knives, one more question. You were talking about the different schools. You were doing lots of different special schools in military training, and you were airborne, so jumping out of airplanes. And I think about this all the time. I have a huge collection of knives. I love especially fixed blade tactical and combat knives, things that don't actually come into my suburban dad lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I always wonder, what's it like jumping out of an airplane with a knife? What are the considerations for sheathing and all that stuff that you have to consider?
So whenever I used to jump out of a plane, my first thing is to put the knife in my rucksack. I had never actually jumped with it on my person. The reason being is you're doing a parachute landing fall. It's not like in the movies most of the time where everybody lands standing up. When you land a parachute landing fall, you're crashing into the ground, and you actually go to airborne school for I believe it's 3 or 4 weeks, and they teach you how to fall properly so you don't break your ankles, knees, shoulders, any of those things. And I've been told that it's the equivalent of getting in a car crash with a car going 40 miles an hour every time you hit the ground. And me, I'm happy to be a larger individual. I mean, at the time I was probably like 220 pounds, 6'1", and that's still large for the military for what I was doing. So I used to fall faster than everyone. So it was probably hitting 50 miles an hour for me.
So you're injured, you're laid up, you're watching YouTube, you decide, I'm a handy guy, I could start making knives. What was that first knife like, and how did you move from there?
So it was more of a hunting knife. I grew up hunting and fishing outdoors. It's what got me into. It's essentially what got me into the military. I wanted to be a sniper, just because I loved shooting guns. And so the first knife I wanted to make was a hunting knife because I had every plan to actually hunt that fall. I hadn't hunted since I joined the military, just from deployments and schools and everything like that. So I was like, man, I'm going to have so much time on my hands to hunt. I'm going to make a hunting knife. And so it was essentially just it was a fixed blade drop weight hunter, which I actually still make now. It's probably version 14.0 at this point, but the blade is still very similar. It's actually this blade right here. This is one of my models that I still sell. It's the Mako. Trying to hold this up to where it makes sense. There it is. And so the blade is essentially the same from when I started making it. And it's just a simple drop point. This is about 3.95 inches, give or take. It's 3/16 on the spine, so it's thick and heavy, but it's probably like 0.15, or it's 15 thou behind the edge. And this one actually has a textured G10 handle with Tiffany blue pins, just for fun. So I just thought it was going to be a good contrast, but it's essentially the same knife. It's just the handle design has been heavily modified since I first designed it. So it's much more ergonomic in the hand than it ever was when I first started making it. So
what was the handle like initially?
Oh man, it was very blocky, it liked to roll in your hand a lot. It just was not a good knife, but it had a similar design, but instead of having this kind of curve going along it here, it kind of just went completely straight, and then you just had the drop. So it just, the knife didn't necessarily make too much sense because I had no idea how to design a knife. I couldn't even draw a knife, to be honest with you. I just did my best, and I kind of let the steel just take me where it wanted to go. And it's a functional knife. I still have it. I just do not show it to people. So.
Well, so 3/16 of an inch thick, but it seems like a pretty broad blade, so it must be pretty thin behind the edge with that high flat grind.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's shoot, I want to say it's close to, it's definitely over an inch. It's probably close to 1.5 inches from the spine. I couldn't tell you the exact distance. I'm not much of a measuring person, but I do know it's 3/16 thick for sure. But it definitely is thin behind the edge, and I always do like a higher flat grind, usually about 3/4 up the blade, which is my preferred grind. I think it has a good combination of making it a stout blade. It gives you a little bit of shoulder on the flats too, but it's thin behind the edge, which, I mean, a knife being what it is, it's supposed to cut. So that's what I wanted to do first and foremost. So.
Well, so how did you learn?
Oh man, first I learned off of YouTube, which I think is like the #1 option for people to learn how to make knives anymore. Which it's crazy how much stuff is out there on YouTube now. Like there was a lot of stuff when I first started making, but it was almost like it was like they would give you only almost half of the pizza pie basically and leave the other pieces by themselves. So it was like they would give you enough to want to get started, but not give you enough to actually finish anything. And so that was my problem. I would get essentially like a rough shape, and then I would get to the point where I need to grind bevels, or I need to heat treat something, or any of those things, and I would just fail miserably time after time after time. And finally, I was just like, you know what? I got to reach out or something. I think I emailed a ton of knife makers. I messaged people on YouTube with the videos I was watching. I did comments, didn't hear anything back. And then I finally found Blade Forums, and I just put a message out there on Blade Forums, and I said, is anybody willing to take on an apprentice? At the time I lived in Columbus, Georgia. I was a sniper school instructor at the time. And I finally got an email back from somebody saying, hey, there's this guy, his name is Dan Peters. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he makes awesome knives. But he's like, email that guy. He lives in Columbus too. He's in the military as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
he might be able to take you on. And I emailed him, and he emailed me back in about 30 minutes and said, come on to the house. I was there about 2.5 hours later. And he asked me what I wanted to learn, and he showed me everything that I wanted to learn, basically. And he didn't even say, hey, you can sweep my floors or anything. He's just like, whenever you want to make a knife, come onto the house. And I think I was there probably about 3 or 4 days a week from that point on out. To that
Wow.
point out, he probably hated every second of it because he only had one grinder, and he had to share it with me at that point whenever I was there. And I mean, we carried similar hours being in the military, so when he was off work, I would come over and just make knives. And he showed me, I think I made probably the first 10 or 15 knives I ever made with him. And he showed me how to grind knives for the most part. He showed me with a jig, and I don't use a jig anymore. I freehand grind now, and showed me how to do the proper heat treat on certain steels. And he was a great mentor to have for sure. But then, you know how the military goes. I had to do a duty station change. And so at that point, I was kind of on my own, and I had to learn from then on out how to fix all my mistakes by myself. And I taught myself how to freehand grind from YouTube videos, like guidance, obviously. There was a guy, whenever somebody asked me, how do you freehand grind? I tell them to go on YouTube and type in Ecom knives.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy made the best grinding videos. And I still watch them to this day. Just when I'm sick, I'm like, I'm going to throw on some old YouTube videos or something. And I actually got to meet him one year at Blade Show, which was very cool. But I know he's not making knives anymore, as far as I know. But he was a very cool guy to meet in person. So
That's always really sad when I hear that someone's not making knives. There was someone I had on the show here whose work I really admired, who was a great guy, and he just kind of stopped. Made it public, you know, I'm done with this. I'm moving on to something else. And I was like, no, don't do it. So when you left Dan Peters' tutelage, do you think you had, well, obviously from seeing what you're doing now, but did he leave you? Did that situation leave you with enough to kind of grow on your own? And would you suggest new makers seek mentorship?
I definitely, he kind of gave me a really good base. I at that point I knew how to finish a knife. I definitely couldn't finish it very well compared to now, which, I mean, that's 10 years of experience. But
Yeah.
Having a good foundation from somebody who knows what to do, I think, is extremely important. Especially when it comes to grinding the bevels and getting good blade geometry. And I mean, heat treat is super important, which, you know, that. I mean, if you can't heat treat the knife, I mean, you might as well throw it in the trash. You just have a piece of steel. It could be brittle, it could be soft. You don't know what it's like. And if you don't have the right recipe or the right procedure or anything along those lines, I mean, you got nothing. I mean, the edge isn't going to stay sharp. I mean, it might roll, it might chip. You don't know what you have. And having somebody that understands the type of steel that you're going to use, or understands how to heat treat in general, is just super important. And so, yeah, whenever somebody asks me, like, even at Blade Show, I get people come up to me all the time, like, and I'm an open book. They're like, well, how did you get this finish? How did you do this? I'll tell you everything that I do, because, I mean, there's no reason for me not to. I would love for other people to get into making knives. And if they live in the Georgia area, they can come to my house and they can make a knife with me. I actually have a guy who, he bought a knife, one of the knives from Blade Show this year, and he messaged me later that night. He's like, hey, if you're doing classes, I would love to do a class. And I'm like, never done a class, really. I mean, I've shown people how to do things here and there, but sure, let's do a class. That ought to be fun. So I'm looking forward to that. I got to schedule that with him soon too. But yeah, I would definitely say it's always good to seek people out. Some people are better trainers than others. And I mean, I don't know everything there is to know about knife making, but I could definitely help people out for sure. So
That's so cool. That's, I mean, you're embodying the spirit I hear of over and over again. People say how generous the knife making community is for teaching and learning, and people understand, like, I can show you how to do something, but you're not going to be making Josh Wolfe knives. You're going to be making your own knives, and I've just kind of shown you some of the process.
Oh, that's definitely true. And that guy too. I mean, he emailed me and he said, "I already have a design in mind. What do you think of it?" And I told him my thoughts. I said, we might want to adjust some things here, maybe adjust some things there. But I'm like, if you just want to make the blade first, I mean, we could do another class and we can adjust the design as you go. Like, use the knife for a couple of weeks, see what you like about it, see what you don't like about it, and we could go from there. I mean, as God knows, my first knife is just terrible, and I would love to throw it in the trash, but I think my mom is the one who won't let me do it. So
good for her. All right, so before Jim is scrolling through your Instagram page, and there are a lot of really cool models I want to talk about. But before we get to them, I just want to ask, at this stage, the stage after you left, after Dan Peters was, or after you were assigned to a different station and such, and that mentorship sort of parted ways, what was the state of your shop? And what did you learn about what you needed in terms of tools?
Oh, I did not have a shop at all. I had to build the shop. I went from Columbus, Georgia to Hawaii, which was horrible for building a shop too, by the way. I don't think people have ever realized like how much shipping costs to go to Hawaii, but it's awful. And so I knew what I needed based off of how he taught me how to make knives and how I wanted to make knives too. I wasn't super sure about the aesthetic that I wanted for my knives. I was still kind of doing some satin here or there. I was doing some, I would call them two-tone finishes, where I would do ferric chloride and then do like a satin on the actual bevels, which it looked okay, but I was still fairly new to what I was doing, and I was just trying to figure things out. And so I had to buy a grinder. I had to ship it on a tugboat over to Hawaii, and luckily they had a Home Depot, so I could get an air compressor, and I had a sandblast cabinet from Harbor Freight, and shoot, that was about all I had. And I mean, you can make a lot of knives doing that with just that stuff, but I would send everything out for heat treat. I went to Peter's Heat Treat a lot, and they heat treated all my knives for a while. I think my first 50 or 60 knives they heat treated for me. And yeah, it was just crazy. I didn't have 220 in my garage because I had a separate garage. So I had a dryer plug, and I ran probably a 200-foot cord into my garage every time I wanted to use my grinder. It was insane. And I've set up 3 different shops since then. This one I'm sitting in right now is my 3rd shop, and hopefully my final for a long time, because I'm so sick of moving.
Yeah. Well, that sending your stuff from Hawaii to Peter's Heat Treat, I mean, we all know Peter's is awesome, but that wait must have been murder.
Yeah, I mean, I was only doing maybe like 5 to 10 knives at the time, so it wasn't horrible. But I mean, it would take probably three weeks to a month and a half almost to get my knives back. But it is what it is. But that's kind of why when I finally got my shop before this one, the first thing I bought was a heat treat oven, because I'm just like, I'm so sick of sending my knives out to other people and having to wait. I'm like, I do this in my spare time. So, I mean, I have a full-time job, and so people are going to wait as is. It's unfair to send the knife out when I know how to heat treat knives. Like, just bite the bullet, spend the money, get a heat treat oven, and start heat treating your knives in house, which has been amazing, because now instead of it taking 3 weeks to a month just to build one knife because I have to wait for it to get heat treated, I can build it in a weekend essentially and be in and out the door. So everything I do is completely in-house at this point. Nothing gets sent out, which is great. I like it better that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet. I mean, especially because, like you said, you can make a knife in a weekend and fulfill an order quickly, and everyone's happy. You've got the order out, customers got their knife, and you can move on to the next one. So you buy a heat treat oven, and you learned some of that heat treating skill from Dan Peters. But what about the steel? Do you use the same kind of steel, and do you have a recipe kind of dialed in for that, or are you all over the place with steels?
So it took me a long time to kind of figure out what kind of steels I wanted to use. The first knife I ever made, actually the first two knives I ever made, were from 1095, which I don't mind 1095. I think it's a great knife steel. I just don't really like to work with it too much. And so I went straight from 1095 to 3V, which was probably the worst idea. But the knives were great. And Dan Peters was using 3V at the time too, so he kind of turned me on to it. And it's a great steel. I love 3V, but the only issue that I have with it is just the cost. The cost for it is just really expensive, and then having to do the cold temper as well. So you got to get like liquid nitrogen or dry ice in a freezer or something along those lines, and that's just extra time added on. And so I was always constantly looking for something that would play along with my aesthetic that I wanted, but also be almost as good performing knife steel as 3V, because I think 3V is a great performing knife steel. It's super tough, holds an edge really well. And then I think it was Jacob Peters, if you're familiar with him, or Jacob Peterson, excuse me, from the Preppers Bunker Outdoors. He's a good friend of mine. And he kind of started talking to me about ADCR-V2, and he turned me on to ADCR-V2, and I really never looked back from it, because I mean, I've compared it with 3V, and unless you're doing the most minute detail, time-consuming reviews on it, you would probably never notice the difference between the two knives. I mean, ADCR-V2 is a little bit less tough than 3V, but it's amazing. I mean, it holds an edge really well. It's a high carbon steel, so it's a little less, stain resistant. But I do a black oxide finish on my knives anyways, which is part of my aesthetic. And so to me, it doesn't really matter. You're getting a little less performance, but it's a very high performing knife, and it's a great steel, and it's easy to work with. I don't have to do a cold temper. It's just a straight up oil quench, which is amazing for me. And it works great. And then I found an even better steel that I like to use more now, which is 8670, which I love to use on chopping knives. It's probably one of the toughest steels I've found on a chopping knife. And all my big blades, unless I get like a specific order for ADCR-V2, I do out of 8670 now. And this one actually right here, this is the new Midnight Patriot. This is 3.0, and this is 8670, and it's about 17 thou behind the edge. And I'm telling you, I have beat the crap out of this knife. as much as I possibly could, I have beat this knife up. And I have. It's a big one. I appreciate it.
If you're just listening, he's holding up the Midnight Patriot version 3, and it's, I mean, to my eye, it's just a beautiful recurved clip point or Bowie, but a chopper all day long with sort of a downward angled blade from the handle, and it really makes good use of that subtle recurve. That thing is beautiful. I held 2 of these in my hand at Blade Show this year. I think don't put that away. Let's take a look at that. Yeah. And okay, so you've mentioned your aesthetic. You've used the word 3 times now. Describe your aesthetic? And I kind of have an intuitive sense because I've seen the knives you have on display 2 years in a row, but how would you describe it?
So kind of the way I like to make all my knives, and I mean, I like to make them to be used. A knife to me is a tool, and I don't like it when, I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong, but when customers tell me, oh yeah, I'm going to let it sit in my safe, and I'm like, please just take it out and just do something with it. Like, cut some boxes. I don't care. Like, give me some feedback on how it works. And something along those lines. I build these things to be tools, but I also build them. I like to call them almost apocalypse survival tools, almost something you could beat and abuse, and it should keep on lasting you for years to come. And I mean, that's what I pride myself on. And I like to tell people I kind of make the Toyota Tacoma of knives. I mean, they might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but they're just going to keep going and going and going. So that's kind of the way I like to make them. And I always make them with this tactical feel as well, just to go back to my military roots, whether it's a hunting or EDC knife. It's just the aesthetic that I like. I don't like to see shiny things other than the edge, obviously. But I mean, it's just my preference. And when people come to me to buy a knife, I assume that's their preference as well, because there's a lot of knife makers out there that make knives, and they make great knives, but this is just the way I like to make them. So I think they look cool.
It's I think they look cool too. And it's funny that you say you make apocalypse survival tools, because yes, no doubt they are capable of that role. And that you don't want to hear that these things are living in a drawer somewhere. But at the same time, it's obvious to me from seeing it here, but also from picking them up and inspecting them, that you take a lot of pride in their refinement and in their, how they look and how they feel in hand. It's not just a tool that you're going to pick up and hack through the apocalypse with. How do you know when a knife is done? If you're trying to make something that is really built for just rough and ready, but they're so refined and beautiful.
So I like to tell people I do my best to make every single knife better than the last knife that I made. If I'm not doing that, then I might as well stop making them, because I mean, every knife should be better than the last one. You got to try to perfect your craft. You're never going to be perfect, but I mean, Lord, like 7-8 years ago, you should see my plunge lines. They're awful. And that's just the way it goes. But now when I pick up one of my knives, I can critique them all day still, but I know at that day when I was making that knife, that is the best knife that I could put out. And I mean, it doesn't leave my shop if it's not the best that I have on that day. Like, it just doesn't. And my wife likes to tell me that I'm a perfectionist with every knife, because I will critique my knives till the cow comes home. But I mean, everything that comes out these days, I just am very happy with. The aesthetic is great, in my opinion. The aesthetic is great. The grind lines are great for me, basically. I'm very happy with what's coming out of my shop these days, and I hope the customers are as well. So,
okay, so how much of this, how much of your development as a knife maker, as a craftsman, how much of this is due to your military mindset from your past life going into this?
oh, I would say every ounce of it. I mean, before I joined the military, I was very undisciplined. I was very impatient, very impulsive, and I mean, this hobby that has turned into a passion at this point. And I mean, one day I hope to retire from my full-time job and do knives full-time. And every ounce of it, me making a knife, comes from military training. Like, it's all of it comes from, like, I don't have the patience that I have today to make a knife without being in the military. I don't have the discipline to make a knife. I mean, but probably if I tried to make a knife when I was 16 years old, I would have gotten to a certain step and just quit, and it would have sat in a drawer for the next 20 years. I mean, there was just no way. And now with the training that I've got, it's always helped me to be able to accomplish things and complete things. I mean, if I have a knife that's incomplete right now, it just drives me nuts until it's done. and it needs to be done correct. And if it's not done to what I think is correct, then it's not going out the door. Let's put it that way. So
one of the very first guests I had on this show is a local man who teaches combat vets how to make knives, combat veterans how to make knives. And from his perspective, a lot of it had to do with the therapeutic nature of doing something creative, losing yourself in a process. But he discovered as he was doing this that military men and women really responded to the order of things. You do this first, and then this, and then this, and then the result is this.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, the military life is very repetitive. We kind of thrive on routine, and even still to this day, oh man, if I don't have some type of routine, like I am stressed out, and that's just the way I am now. I don't know if the military just trained me how to be that way or ingrained that into my mind, but if I mean, making a knife just kind of calms me down too. I mean, it's so much work to do, and it's so difficult to do, and it's difficult to teach people how to do. But I mean, I feel like the military mindset is kind of just, it's very easy to go from the military to kind of doing physical things or working with your hands. It's just, you get a certain type of people that will try to build things, whether it's a knife or a house or electrical work, plumbing, or anything like that. I mean, I feel like military people can kind of just leave the military and jump into something like that and learn it quickly. And it has 100%, in my opinion, to do with the fact that they were in the military. They were trained how to do things, and they have that military mindset that helps them kind of adapt to any situation and adapt and overcome anything that they need to learn or anything they need to do. I think a blue collar thing like building a knife or plumbing or electrical, it just lends to people in the military. So
yeah, I think the evidence points to that. So we've seen the Mako, we've seen the Midnight Patriot, and I'm not saying I don't want to see those again, but let's talk about some more of your knives. Let's see what else you've got and what what they're for, and what kind of response you hear from customers.
So this one you should be familiar with. I was told to bring this today. This one is a custom Midnight Patriot. It's actually I think it's the first version 2.0 of the Midnight Patriot, and there's a lot of mistakes that happened with this knife, and it turned into a very custom piece very quickly. But this is probably the knife that I've learned from the most. Just building this knife, I learned a lot. Every knife that I've made since this knife, I think I built it 5 or 6 years ago. There's a lesson in here somewhere. And it turned out great eventually, but I think it probably took me about 16 hours of grinding just to get this to where I wanted it to go. And it's got a lot of flaws still, but this is version 2, and then you have version 3 of the Midnight Patriot, and you can just see the difference, in my opinion. I mean, there's not only is there a lot of grinding hours between the two, but there's just a big difference in ergonomics with the handles. It's kind of hard to pick up on the camera.
Yeah, I can see that.
There's just a lot going on, and I mean, this was probably my 3rd or 4th attempt to do a clip point, and it did not end up a clip point. But this one definitely does end up clip point at this point. This knife is where I learned how to do it.
So that knife, the one that you have in your left hand, this one here, so it has a kind of a very, very similar profile if you're just looking at it up against the sky silhouetted. But when you're looking at the grind on the blade, it's very different. This has like a full top bevel. It's not, it doesn't look sharpened, but it's a full top bevel, whereas the 3.0 has a swedge, more like a Bowie knife or something. What were you going for with this full bevel on the top part of the blade on this?
So it was more of a specific request as well. My stepdad, which you met, his name is Jim as well. He kind of requested something to carry. He's very into his Scottish heritage, and he wanted a belt knife specifically, but he wanted something similar to this. And so I did my best to oblige him, but I kind of wanted to do it in my own aesthetic and appeal. And so I took a design, was version 1.0 of the Midnight Patriot. I redesigned it completely into version 2.0, but he wanted kind of some special grinds to it, and this is what we came up with. I wanted the top bevel was supposed to be a little bit shorter than this, but I think it turned out pretty well for the most part, especially because it was kind of still a very new knife to me, and honestly, I was still kind of new to grinding larger knives at the time. Most of everything I was doing was 5 inches and below, and this one happens to be 8.5. Okay. So yeah, it's a cool blade.
It's really
I don't
cool.
take it out very often because it's not mine, it's his. But he likes to show it off at the show because he's proud and supportive of me, which I appreciate. And honestly, I get more people ask me about this knife when it's on the table than most of the other knives that are on the table now, which I think is funny.
Well, that secondary bevel on the top is pretty striking, and it reminds me of two different knives. The first one is like a kind of a loveless sub-hilt fighter, where you've got a double beveled clip point. But it's funny because this until you mentioned your stepfather's Scottish heritage, this didn't occur to me. But it's kind of Dirk-like too, in that it's got a somewhat symmetrical thing happening from top to bottom.
Yep, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was trying to figure out the name of the knife, and you just got it. That was the exact knife that he wanted. He wanted it something in kind of Dirk style. I just could not remember the name right now for the life of me.
That is cool. So before you show me the next knife, I'm curious about your design process. Are you designing things at the grinder when you have steel in your hand, or are you drawing? You mentioned you're not the best draftsman before. Are you drawing stuff out, or are you just kind of sculpting?
So along with making knives, learning how to make knives, I've kind of developed better drawing skills now. I cannot draw a landscape. I can draw a stick figure really well, but the only thing that I can draw is probably a knife now. So whenever I go through a design process, I mean, I always have an idea of how I want the knife to look, and now through trial and error, I usually have an idea of how I want the handle to be. Which most of my knives have very similar handles for a reason, because of certain ergonomics that I'm trying to achieve. But when I first started designing, they were more straight, like the knives were more straight with a little bit of a drop in them. Now I think it's more aesthetically pleasing to have more of a curve and everything. And I started using some drafting tools here and there. If you go to like Office Max or Office Depot or something like that, you can find drafting tools that'll help you draw with more of a curve in it. So you don't have to freehand every single thing that you have to draw. So I always draw out the knife, and I'll do everything that I can to make it aesthetically pleasing on the piece of paper. And now I've actually started using kind of a 2D CAD software, which has been super helpful, because now if I draw, I always draw everything out first, but it's called shoot, I can't remember the name of it right now. Knifeprint.com. And for me, it's great because, I mean, you can take a picture and just kind of take your knife design that you drew, and you can kind of draw it out with their 2D CAD. And there's so many functions. If you want to adjust any portion of the design, you can adjust it, and it's so easy to use. And it's such a blessing, because now I don't have to draw out the same knife 3 or 4 different ways. I can just kind of draw it out once, plug it in, and I can adjust things. And then from there, I always make a some type of template. I used to use steel, which was such a waste. And then I'd use scrap G10. Now I actually use fiberglass, which has been great to work with because it's thin, it's light, and I'll take a fiberglass template, and that's the first time that I can feel something in my hand, which is super helpful. It doesn't have a handle, but I can kind of feel it in my hand and feel the very rough edges of the shape and figure out, hey, is this knife handle going to work? Or I can kind of, hold the template up to the light and get the black shadow effect and say, hey, is this design aesthetically pleasing? And then from then on out, I can adjust it on the template, or I can adjust it on the grinder on an actual piece of steel if I want to. So knife design is just fun for me. I redesign my knives probably every day in my head.
So are you taking that template on the fiberglass template, laying it on steel, scribing it out, and then cutting it on like a bandsaw or something? How are you getting your blanks?
Yeah, that's what I do. I've gotten some blanks water jet cut before. I've forged in the past, but I don't forge. I had neck surgery when I was in the military, so forging for me is kind of out the window as on a regular basis. So I do everything stock removal, but that's exactly what I do. I'll take my template and I'll scribe it on a piece of steel, and I'll go ahead and I'll cut it out. I have a metal cutting bandsaw. I think it's 1946 model, something along those lines, and it's been converted from I think it was a single speed, very fast speed bandsaw, and the gentleman I bought it from, he was a machinist by trade, and he converted it to a metal cutting bandsaw. So it's got all these crazy pulleys on it that he put on there, but it runs super slow, and I've had it for the last 8-9 years, and I love that thing. I've kind of semi restored it. But it's got the same like 19 layers of paint. It's probably got lead paint in there somewhere, but I'm not touching it. As long as it runs, I'm going to leave it alone.
I love old tools. My grandfather had the ultimate set of tools, and some of them came my way. But yeah, there's something to be said for those great old Harbor Freight, non-Home Depot tools that were built to last until now. I mean, from the 40s till now. So when Jim was scrolling through your Instagram feed, I saw a knife that I don't think I saw in person, or at least I don't remember, and it's kind of a Wharncliffe. Do you have one of those handy, or can you tell us about that?
Unfortunately, I don't have one handy. Those happen to sell out at Blade Show,
Right on.
which was awesome. I was very happy about that. That's a new-ish model. I had one. Well, I had more than one, but I had that model come out a couple of years ago at Blade Show as well, and that was on the screen was version 2.0, which, man, I love how that knife turned out, and it sold out really quickly. Thankfully, I only had 4 at the show, and everybody that picked them up loved them. It's crazy sharp. It's very slicey. I think the Rockwell hardness is about 61, 62. But it's 12 thou behind the edge. It's sharp. It is a very sharp knife, and it's designed to be an EDC, but it's a hard use EDC. It's not super small, but it's probably about a 3.5 to 3 3/4 inch blade, and it's a little bit smaller of a bevel than, like, say, the Mako or my Bravo 4 model, which usually have a very wide bevel. This one's a little bit shorter. But it's ground very thin, and that's why I wanted it to have a higher Rockwell, basically in order to maintain its level of sharpness for a little bit longer. Especially, I made them out of 86, and yeah, so it's a very cool knife. I'm definitely going to make more in the future. I actually just put it on my website to order today, so hopefully people will start ordering more of that.
So is this the first time you've gone from the more traditional drop point or clip point to a straighter Sachs or a Wharncliffe style?
Yes, it is. And it was kind of weird to do, especially when I first started drawing it, because I'm so used to drawing a drop point and my inkling is always to just draw a drop point. But I kind of just wanted to do something different. And I've always been kind of into like a sheep's foot or a sax. And to me, it's kind of a cross between the two a little bit. I mean, people can fight and argue about that in the comments if they want to, but I'm sure someone will, because everybody has an opinion about knives. But it was, once I finally got the design dialed in the way I wanted it to with the first version, I loved that knife, and it sold pretty well at the first blade show. But I kind of wanted to shelve it and redesign the handle a little bit to make it a little bit more ergonomic. I wasn't super pleased with how the handle turned out, and so when I sat down to figure out my lineup for Blade Show this year, was like, I am going to figure this out because I want to take these to Blade Show. And I had a very certain thing that I wanted to do, which I think Jim showed that on the screen, was that textured G10 handle with the two colors. I think that one was gray and black, or green and black, whichever one it was. But I just wanted that. I thought with the casual black oxide finish that I usually use, which usually looks dark and antique, if you give it something with a little pop, I thought it would look really good, and I was very happy with how it turned out. So,
you know, I think I speak for all sort of knife junkies like myself, is that I love the concept of your designing, redesigning, refining design, because the way I see it is, if you've created a design that I like, if you keep working at it, it's going to be a design that I like even more, that I love. And it's cool to see someone kind of continually change and update and refine. You know, it's still got the spirit of the original blade, but this and that are made better. But wait, tell me about the black oxide finish. I really like the finish of your blades. What is that?
So it's you know what ferric chloride is. So it's very excuse me. It's a very similar concept. This one is actually this is my #1 selling model. It's the Bravo 4.
That's beautiful.
And it's named after when you graduate sniper school in the Army sniper school, you get the designator Bravo 4. And I originally started making this for the Army Sniper Association. And that's kind of where that name came from. But all my knives come with this finish, and what it is it's they use it in tooling a lot when they have they use steel, like high carbon steels or anything along that is easily susceptible to rust. And I kind of took that idea, and I'm definitely not the first person to use this. A lot of knife makers use it. I got it from couldn't tell you which knife maker I got it from, but they're like, if you want to use that finish, it's called Caswell black oxide, and it's similar to ferric chloride. You have to dip the knife into a solution, and it looks blue. It looks like blue Kool-Aid from back in the day. You definitely don't drink it. And so you stick it in there for a few minutes, and then what I do is I'll go ahead and I'll take some double aught steel wool. And when it comes out super black, like super black. And in order to get this kind of antiqued finish, it's very kind of dull gray, I rub it with some double aught steel wool, and it gets those oxides off, and it comes out with this finish. And then there's an oil that you stick it in, and it's basically it's a penetrating oil, basically, and it penetrates the grains of the steel and helps keep it from rusting even more. So it's a great finish. It's super durable. I haven't touched these knives since Blade Show. These have to go to customers that ordered these after Blade Show. But if you've seen my table, my knives have these magnetic displays that I put them on, and they're just made out of wood. And people just keep slapping them on the displays, which it's not their fault. The magnetics are very strong. I need to get those remade. But they slap them on the displays, and they slap the knives together just because the magnets are crazy. And I mean, these things have no scratches, nothing on them. So I mean, it's a super durable finish. It will patina over time, which I think is nice because I mean, no patina is the same, and it customizes the knife to you, and it goes along with the aesthetic even more. It makes it look more apocalyptic and survival like, and to me, that's super cool. So I love this finish.
So your sheaths are Kydex, right?
No, they are leather sheaths.
Right on. Okay.
I used Kydex for a long time, and when I say a long time, it's like a couple of years. And I was so bad at Kydex that I was like, I cannot make any Kydex sheaths for a customer ever again. And so I started contracting it out to kind of they weren't, don't want to say amateur Kydex guys, but I contracted it out to Kydex makers who were doing it as kind of like a hobby as well when I was first started out doing knives, and that was great, but they just couldn't keep up with the demand of what I was kind of spitting out to them. And so it took me a long time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with sheaths. There was a time when I didn't even offer a sheath. And I just was like, go to your favorite sheath maker. I got 3 or 4 I can recommend, and you'll be better off, I promise, because you don't want me to make you a sheath. And so I finally figured out who I wanted to use as far as sheaths were concerned. And I kind of got down to like 3 different candidates. And I knew that I wanted to go with leather because mainly at the time, because when I was making the Kydex so much, every time I would try to make one, I would always end up scratching the finish on the blade from dust or debris or Kydex like clippings that would get stuck in there. And that was probably mainly my fault because I was so bad at making Kydex that I was just like, I'm just going to do leather, because then I don't have an issue with it. I like leather sheaths anyways. Like most people like leather sheaths. So if you're familiar with Jofu leather sheaths, or excuse me, Jofu Leatherworks, he's actually at Blade Show, he's one of the biggest tables that sells leather sheaths. He's got hundreds upon hundreds of leather sheaths. And he makes all my leather sheaths now. And funny enough, he actually lives like 25 minutes from me.
Oh, that's perfect.
It works out great. I give him a call and I say, hey, I need this many sheaths, and he gets them done for me in a week or so. And because he does it full time, so he's great. He makes knife sheaths for, I would probably say, about 75% of the knife makers at Blade Show. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it's leather is so appealing. I like Kydex for small EDC blades that I tuck in my waistband, but for larger knives and for knives I cherish the most, yeah, I definitely love leather. So as we wrap here, Josh, tell me what's in the future for you and Redbeard Blades, and where you would like to go from here.
So for me, I kind of want to, I mean, as we've talked about already, I want to continue to refine my current designs. And whether or not that's not the actual design, but like we talked about, I've gone back to using more G10 now. This is another Bravo 4. It's different than the one I showed before. But this one's got G10, and it's got that textured handle finish from that picture of the Goblin that you saw earlier.
Yeah.
And this one's just a tan and black, basically. And it turns out super cool. I actually don't particularly like the finish of G10 that's been hand sanded, because I think it's too slick on your hands. And being that I make kind of tactical survival knives, that doesn't work for my shtick, I guess. So I like to texture the G10 now, and I think it comes out with a pretty good finish on the handle, and it feels better in the hand, and I think it's pretty cool. But I'm gonna try to come out with more stuff like this for now, and kind of do whatever I can to make my designs a little bit more appealing. I tend to kind of lean towards stuff that's just very tactile and military like. And to me, this is very cool, because it's just black on black almost. And like, I like to hide my pins when it comes to stuff like that. And you can see kind of the ergonomics of the handle shape there. But I like to do stuff like this, but not everybody thinks like me. So I want to start just doing more stuff that's appealing, but kind of still has my style. So that's kind of where I'm going with the colorful G10 these days. And everybody seems to like it. I've had 4 or 5 orders since Blade Show of people wanting to order G10 kind of in that style. So
that's awesome. Josh, thank you so much for joining us on the Knife Junkie podcast. I can't wait to see what you have coming up next. And I, you know, that Midnight Patriot is just, I mean, to me, that's the show stealer. But you know me, I like big recurve clip point blades, and that definitely delivers on that front. So thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. This was great. Honestly, this hour went by very quick, and we can definitely talk about getting you a Midnight Patriot in the future. But I would love to get one in your hands. So
awesome, man. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
The Shockwave Tactical Torch is your ultimate self-defense companion, featuring a powerful LED bulb that lasts 100,000 hours, a super sharp crenulated bezel, and a built-in stun gun delivering 4.5 million volts. Don't settle for ordinary. Choose the Shockwave Tactical Torch. TheKnifeJunkie.com/Shockwave.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Josh Wolfe of Redbeard Blades. Such awesome knives and so great in hand. And by the way, his display in his booth was a pleasure to be at. So definitely check him out next time you're at Blade. But before then, check him out on Instagram, and you'll be glad you did. All right, for Jim working his magic behind the switcher, I'm Bob DeMarco saying until next time, don't take dull for an answer.
Thanks for listening to the Knife Junkie podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review at reviewthepodcast.com. For show notes for today's episode, additional resources, and to listen to past episodes, visit our website, TheKnifeJunkie.com. You can also watch our latest videos on YouTube at TheKnifeJunkie.com/YouTube.